everyone. Welcome to week 6 of our devotional series, Rest for the Weary Soul. I can't believe it is our last week. If you are joining us for the first time today, a little bit about this series is it has been on my heart for some time now. It came from a time of healing, and I really hope that is able to help you in that as well. And if you're just joining us, this is our last week, but you should be able to go back to previous lessons if you would like to watch some of those. They will disappear from Facebook. I believe it's about 2 weeks, and then but they're on our YouTube channel for as long as they're up there. So one thing before we get started today is I wanted to let you know that I will have this full series available for, at joshandamandaministries.org. You'll be able to get it digitally, and you will also be able to get a physical copy of it. That should be available hopefully no later than Monday, but but I believe it should be available a little bit before then. So if that's something that interests you, that's where you'll be able to find it and go over it again, refocus, or do this with others in your church or with your friends or whoever, even just your own personal experience and journey on this. So for those who don't know, sorry, I was checking to make sure the video was working on my end. It didn't look like it was working that way. So I hope it is going up good now. All right. So to start us off, we have different sections of the devotional. The soil is one of our first sections. And this is the heart place where I'm transparent with you, where we connect and you feel seen, understood, and safe. Then we have the roots, and this is the truth that goes deeper, where God meets you. This is where you begin to feel grounded. It's where we dig a little deeper into what we talked about from the soil section. Then we have the branch, and this is the connection and growth, where truth starts changing something. It focuses on how your life connects to God's truth, a shift in perspective or understanding, and letting go, trusting, or surrendering. So, this is where something gently begins to grow. Then we have our final section, which is the leaves. And this is the living it out. It's where rest becomes real and practical. It includes our sections for planting the seeds, which are small mindset or heart shifts. And then we have practice sections, which are simple, doable action steps. This is where you walk away with something you can hold on to. So in week 6, we have rest is where you live now. And the scripture that we're going to be focusing on is Hebrews 4, 9 through 11. So sometimes we think that once we find our way back to God, everything will stay steady from that point on. And we assume that after working through the exhaustion, the over responsibility, the numbness, and the rebuilding, we will not struggle in the same way again. But over time, I began to realize something different. This was not something I was going to fix once and never think about again. It was something I had to continue to live out day by day. I had heard many people say that even as they got older, this did not change in their lives. In fact, their lives became busier than they did before. And that was something that we had discussed in previous sessions as well, is that in every stage of life, we tend to cram a bunch of stuff in our lives to make things just overcrowd. And eventually it can start to cause us to drift away from God. And what I learned is that these seasons rarely announce themselves. We do not usually wake up one morning and decide to become overwhelmed, disconnected, or exhausted. It happens little by little. We say yes to more responsibility. We push through one more tired. We tell ourselves we will spend time with God tomorrow. None of those decisions seem significant on their own. But over time, they begin to pull us away from the place where God intended us to live. And for me, the warning signs were often the same. I become so focused on what needs to get done that I stop paying attention to what is happening inside my heart. My prayer life becomes shorter. My Bible sits unopened more often than it should. And I begin carrying worries instead of surrendering them. And the responsibilities themselves are not always a problem. Problem is when they slowly take that place that belongs to God. There are going to be moments in life when life starts to feel busy again. When you feel the pressure to take on more, or when you notice your time with God beginning to slip. Instead of letting it take over, start recognizing it and responding differently. Take a step back and refocus. And when you do that, that refocusing does not require perfection. It does not mean that you have failed because you noticed yourself drifting. In fact, recognizing it may be evidence that God is already drawing your attention back to Him. And every time we stop, acknowledge where we are, and turn our hearts toward Him again, we're choosing a different path than the one that led us into the exhaustion before. We need to begin to pause and come back, not in a big or dramatic way, but in small, consistent ways that keep you connected. And that's something that we've talked about in the previous sessions as well, is that we don't have to make these big, grand gestures. God doesn't expect us to be perfect when we come back to Him. We can come as we are, and we can make those small changes that help get us back to God and have that reconnection. But we need to realize that rest is not something that you return to only when you are completely worn out. It is something that you have to choose to remain in, even when life feels manageable. Because if you wait until you are exhausted again, you will find yourself back in the same place you have worked so hard to leave. So stop thinking about rest as something you need to get back to and start seeing it as the place where you are meant to live in. So today's scripture is from Hebrews 4:9-11. And it says, "There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from His. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience." And then we have our series passage, which is from Matthew 11:28-29. It says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest in your souls." So as I reflect on everything we have walked through, that passage brings it all together. It shows that rest is not something we visit only when we are exhausted, but it's something we are invited to live in. The writer of Hebrews makes it clear that this rest still remains. It is not past, it is not reserved for a different time or a different kind of person. It is available now, and it is something we are invited to enter into. And this kind of rest is different from simply taking a break or stepping away from responsibility. It is a deeper rest, one that reaches into the way we live, think, and carry things. It is a rest that comes from trusting God instead of striving to hold everything together on our own. That is why the passage says that those who enters God's rest also rest from their works. This does not mean we stop doing things. It means we stop trying to prove, fix, and carry everything through our own effort. We begin to live from a place of trust instead of pressure. And this connects to everything we have seen over these weeks. When tiredness becomes identity, when we carry more than we should, when we feel distant, and when we begin to come back, all of it leads to this place, a place where we no longer live in constant striving. Sorry, I got a little, but begin to live in rest. It's there's choosing to come back when life gets busy, and it is choosing to remain when it would be easier to drift, and it is choosing to guard what God is doing in you, and it is choosing to trust Him instead of carrying everything on your own. And this is not something you do once. It's something you continue to choose. And the more you choose it, the more it becomes the way that you live. And over these past weeks, you have seen what it looks like to move out of exhaustion, to release what you were never meant to carry, to sit honestly in seasons where you did not feel okay, and to begin rebuilding your connection with God in small, consistent ways. So we've talked about not having to feel like you have to do something big. We talked about the small steps. And last week we talked about how there's small steps, but it needs to be something that's consistent, something that you will be able to stick to over and over again. And then you can keep adding some more small steps as you go. Again, small, consistent steps. You have learned to guard what He is doing in your life so that it is not slowly crowded again. And all of that leads to this. Rest is not the end of the process. It is the place that you live from. It is easy to fall back into the mindset of striving, the mindset of doing all the things. And even after everything you have learned, you may find yourself looking and thinking that you need to maintain it perfectly, or that if you slip, you have to start all over again. But living in rest does not mean you will never have hard days or moments where you feel the pull to go back to old patterns. It means you know where to return, and you return more quickly. And living from rest looks like staying rooted in what you already know is true. Your identity is not found in what you accomplish. Your worth is not measured by how much you carry. Your connection with God is not based on how perfectly you perform. It is built on remaining in Him. And you begin to respond differently when life feels heavy. You pause instead of pushing harder. When things start to slip, you come back instead of drifting further. When you feel overwhelmed, you realize it instead of holding on tighter. And this is what it means to live from rest. It is not passive, it is intentional. It is choosing again and again to stay connected to God and to live from the place He has already invited you into. And the more that you live this way, the more natural it becomes. Not because life gets easier, but because you are no longer trying to carry it on your own. And many of us have probably heard before where um, the closer that you get to God, the more that the devil's going to try and get a hold of you because he doesn't want you to get closer to God. And so you're going to start seeing these obstacles there, but you'll know when to grab a hold of God and when to hold tighter to God and not hold tighter to all of the stress and the worry and the doubt that is there. And you learn to go back to those things that you first started from. And as you make these small, consistent changes, and as you grow closer to God, even if those things are thrown at you, you are going to have a stronger relationship with God to where you are able to protect yourself from all of those things that are being thrown at you again. And the more that you really focus on this and the more that you really protect your heart, which was another thing that we talked about in previous weeks, is that the easier it's going to come to being able to protect it. And the more changes that you make and those smaller consistent steps that you make and the closer that you grow to God, other people are going to notice that in you as well. And then you can start helping others learn how to find rest in God, learn how to make those small, consistent changes. Let them know, hey, it doesn't have to be big, consistent or big changes. It just has to be small, consistent changes. And that they don't have to be perfect to come to God. And that whatever that we can give to start making that push forward is what we need to get that reconnection with God. So you're not returning to rest, you're living in it. You're finding those ways that you can stay in that rest and stay within that peace. And that is what this whole series has been about, it's been to show you how to get out of the tiredness, how to just push through those times of depression, knowing that, it's other people go through this too, and you're not alone. And that those times can really knock you down and they can really keep you from where you need to go. But if you find those small, consistent ways to help you through those and help you notice those areas quicker, you can start to do what you need to do what your small, consistent steps are to get closer to God and help pull you out of that area. And hopefully, if you do decide to use this in a small group with other friends or however you're going to do it, you will have other people around you who you can connect with and help you out of that. Because as I have been honest with the things in this devotional, I hope that you can have the honesty and transparency with those around you. It can be hard. It's hard to be that honest and open with other people, but if you make great connections and you are able to be honest and open with those people, hopefully they will be the support there for you. They've heard the things that you have gone through, they've heard how you struggle, but hopefully they've also heard about those small, consistent changes that you have made. So that way they can then remind you of what those steps were that you took before. Because maybe at that point in your life, you're so overwhelmed by your anxieties and the things going on that you're forgetting about the small, consistent steps that you took earlier to get you closer and reconnected with God. And I really hope that you are able to come back to this over and over again, even if you don't have that small women's group that you can talk to, even if you don't really have other Christian relationships that you can lean on. Hopefully, you can come back to this again and again and just revisit it. And this helps you go back to that rest point. So, let's take a moment to pause and reflect on what we've seen in this study. We've seen that rest is not something you return to only when you are exhausted. It is something you choose to remain in daily. You do not earn rest, you enter it through trust. Small, consistent choices keep you connected to God, and living in rest means responding differently, not living perfectly. And I really like that last note there. I want us to kind of look at that a little further, is that the living in rest means responding differently. And it's not living perfectly. So it's when life throws those curveballs at you, when you have overexhaustion or worries, or you are saying yes to all the things instead of saying no to the things that you should say no to, you're able to hopefully see it ahead of time and get to those warning signs before you get in too deep. Now, when you get in too deep, you know that you can find your way back by doing those small, consistent changes. But hopefully through this series, you will learn how to live in the rest. So doing those small, consistent changes every day, listening to that worship music that keeps you connected to God, finding that time to sit outside in nature to do your devotionals or pray or just whatever is drawing you closer to. And like we mentioned before, is that things are going to come at you, but being able to respond to them differently is going to make a world of difference. So the next things that I want to focus on are planting the seeds section. So where do you notice yourself slipping back into striving instead of staying in rest? Maybe it's even happened during the series. Maybe you have made some progress in week 1 through 3. By the time week 4 has gotten here, you started to kind of go back into some of those older habits. And so being able to notice that is going to help you get back to your connection. So which or what helps you recognize when you are starting to feel overwhelmed again? Is it you start to think, when's the last time I've opened my Bible and read it? Or is it you've noticed yourself being a little bit more agitated than usual? Or is it just you're feeling a little down, like more down than what you have been feeling since you started and since you made the changes? So be thinking about what helps you recognize when you are starting to feel overwhelmed again. And what has helped you return to God more quickly in this season? So maybe you have found yourself slipping out of the rest, and maybe you've already started to return to God more quickly just by some of those weeks. And so if you start to think about, what has actually helped me to return to God more quickly in this season? And if you just reflect on it, a note for the future, or even if you write it down in a journal, maybe journaling is your thing that helps you stay connected with God and draw yourself closer. But what has helped you return to God more quickly? And what is one way you can continue choosing rest in your daily life moving forward? So that one is probably going to be a little bit harder for some people, especially if you're still on your journey. You're still trying to find your way to the rest. But what's the one way you continue choosing rest in your daily life moving forward? So thinking about some of those previous questions that we've asked. And if you've already experienced some of those, great. If you haven't, that's okay too. And that's what you can start working towards. And if you've tried to do some of those things and they haven't really gone the way that you were hoping, do something else. Try something new. Um, Maybe look on some different places, read some different books where maybe they've talked about just different ways to reconnect with God and try some of those. So then our life application section is as you move forward from the study, focus on continuing what you have already started. You do not need to add more. You need to remain consistent in what is already working. And each day, take a moment to check in with yourself and ask if you are living from rest or drifting back into striving. When you notice the shift, gently come back. So keep your time with God simple and steady. Whether it is a short prayer, a verse, or a quiet moment, let it be about connection, not performance. Like, don't be sitting in a Sunday morning service and thinking that you have to respond in a certain way, that you have to raise your hand, that you have to have some kind of way that you need to show others that you are connecting with God. And let the connection be a connection. If you truly feel the connection to God in that worship service and you want to raise your hand, raise your hand. But don't feel like you have to do that even when you're not feeling it. And maybe for some, maybe that's what your step is, where you are just raising your hands to God and you are finding that way as a connection. And that is all. But let it be about connection. Let what you're doing and what steps you're taking be about the connection. And when life becomes busy again, remember that you do not have to wait until you are exhausted to return. You can pause and come back right away. And the truth to carry is rest is not something that I visit, it is where I live. And these are going to be hard steps to remember to come back to, because when life does get busy, when you do get overwhelmed, when you start saying yes, yes, yes to everything, it is going to be easy to start drifting away again. But if you have those small, consistent steps that you can take to find your way back to God every time, is going to be the place where you can live in the rest and you can find comfort and peace. And that is really what I wanted this whole devotional to be about, is to go through all these weeks and help you and even help myself to learn how to live in the place of rest, how to let go of those things that try to get in the way. I'll let go of those things that block us from what we need to do. And I really hope that during all of this, that you were all able to find comfort in any part of this devotional, that you were able to get what you needed to get, even if it was maybe from 1 week, it gave you exactly what you needed. If it was the whole week, that's amazing. I know I've had some people come up and say they really enjoyed the devotional, and I am so grateful for that, because when I went through this and I started thinking about all these struggles, I knew I wasn't the only one out there that needed something like this. I I knew that there were other people out there who needed to know how to get that connection back. What needed to happen to get that connection back? What was causing the disconnection? And I never did anything like this before, but I really felt God urging me to do this for myself and for others. So that way we could all find our rest for our weary souls. We go through so much, and to be able to learn how to get that connection back, and how to be able to pause and go back to it again when we do find ourselves drifting away from God, I think is a huge need that hope I was able to help you get a hold of and understand how to do that. So I'm going to close in prayer, and then I just have a little thing after prayer. Um, so I hope you stick with. So Lord, thank you for walking with us as we went throughout this whole devotional series. I thank you for allowing us to learn how to let go of the things that we need to let go of. I thank you for allowing us to start to understand when we are drifting away, and to know how to get back to you during those times, and realizing that we don't have to make big grand gestures, but small consistent steps are what can help us get to where we need to go. And I pray that you please watch over everyone who has been on this devotional journey with us, and those who will come after this devotional. And I pray that you would just be with us as we go throughout the rest of the week. We love you. Praise you. Amen. And the last thing that I wanted to mention before we left is I just wanted to say a thank you to all of you so much for joining me in with me these last 6 weeks. I greatly look forward to more in the future again. I do plan on having some. Not sure when they will be out again, but I do plan on making more. And if you would like to be able to come back to this series, revisit what you have gone over in the 6 weeks, or if you want to do this with a group of people at your church or a small group of friends, don't forget to check out joshandamandaministries.org. The 6-week series will be on there soon, as well as being able to get a physical copy of it too. So that's all I had. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And I hope that it was a blessing to you. Bye.